Imagine standing on a cliff edge at 4,000 meters, wind howling in your ears, staring at a palace carved into a golden hill and a monastery clinging to the sky, and realizing that for most of your life, this world simply didn't exist on your map. Tibet's hidden monasteries and ancient earth forests are not just destinations. They feel like portals into another timeline, where mountains pray, lakes remember, and the dead return to the sky. Tibet is a land that forces you to slow down. Each breath at high altitude feels earned, each step a reminder that you're walking through a living museum of faith and geology. This journey weaves through forgotten kingdoms, salt lakes where nothing survives, glaciers that feed entire valleys, and monasteries where monks still print sacred texts by hand on wooden blocks. Our story begins in the far west, where a fallen kingdom still refuses to disappear. The Guge Kingdom ruins rise out of the desert like a mirage, perched at about 3,658 meters, one of the highest archaeological destinations on Earth. The sun bleaches the cliffs into shades of ochre and gold, but inside the carved-out structures, time is stubborn. Murals of daily life and religious rituals still cling to the walls, whispering scenes from the 9th to the 17th century. Imagine 1,200 rooms stacked into the rock at Saparang, forming a vertical city of caves, tunnels, and stairways. Not just homes, but chapels, assembly halls, and hidden shrines. As you climb through these ruins, the silence is almost uncomfortable. No crowds, no vendors, just the wind threading through broken windows and doorways. Here, history doesn't sit behind a museum rope. It crumbles under your fingertips. The Guge Kingdom once controlled trade routes, culture, and religion in this region, yet it collapsed so completely that for centuries, it was nearly forgotten. A reminder that even great civilizations can vanish, leaving only painted walls and empty rooms as evidence. From Guge, the path winds toward one of Tibet's oldest monasteries, Tholing. Founded in the 10th century, it became a vital center for spreading Buddhist philosophy and art across the region. The monastery sits at around 3,840 meters, surrounded by rust-colored cliffs and distant Himalayan peaks, its whitewashed walls and red accents glowing against a deep blue sky. The air here is dry and cold year-round, but inside the monastery the atmosphere is heavy, with incense, with centuries of prayer, with stories painted directly on the walls. Tholing is not just visually striking, it is spiritually shocking. This is one of the places where sky burial is practiced, a ritual that confronts death in a way many outsiders find unsettling. Instead of burying or cremating the body, Tibetans place the deceased on high platforms, so vultures and other birds can consume the remains, returning the body to nature as quickly as possible. In Tibetan belief, the physical body is only a vessel. Feeding it to the sky is an act of surrender and generosity, not horror. The murals inside Tholing, many from the 11th and 12th centuries, echo this worldview. Vibrant depictions of deities, rituals, teachers, and cosmic symbolism layered over centuries. Leaving the monastery, the landscape shifts from sacred architecture to something that looks like another planet. The Zanda Earth Forest, often called the Zanda or Xander Earth Forest, stretches across the horizon like a city built by giants, not people. Towering formations, up to about 61 meters high, rise like stone castles, carved over millions of years by water, wind, and time. This is not a forest of trees, but a forest of rock, bare, sculpted, and eerily silent. The region was once the heart of the ancient Guge civilization, and archaeologists have uncovered traces of human presence dating back thousands of years in and around these formations. Yet the Earth Forest today is one of the driest places on Earth, receiving barely about 102 millimeters of rain each year, a desolate-looking land that surprisingly shelters rare high-altitude plants and animals adapted to its extreme conditions. The local Tibetan communities bring their own narratives, weaving myths, rituals, and festivals into this otherworldly terrain, turning geology into culture. As the journey pushes further, the dry earth gives way to shimmering water. Pangong so west, part of the larger Pangong Lake, lies at around 4,350 meters, a long ribbon of blue stretching roughly 128 kilometers across the high plateau. Around 30% of its waters lie in India, while about 70% fall within China, making it as much a political landmark as a geographic one. At first glance, the lake looks serene, but stand on its rocky shore for a full day and you'll see one of its secrets. The water changes color, shifting from turquoise to royal blue, sometimes steel gray, depending on the light, the wind, and the clouds. Here too, sky burial is part of local custom, with bodies placed on high outcrops where vultures circle and descend. The practice folds death into the landscape, making the lake not only scenic, but deeply symbolic. Around Pangong, daily life is grounded in simplicity. Barley flour, known as tsampa, is a staple, mixed with tea or butter to fuel people who thrive in these harsh conditions. The combination of changing light on the lake and the rhythm of village life creates a strange paradox, a place both remote and intensely alive. But if there is one mountain that defines this journey, it is Mount Kailash, or Mount Kailash as often written, rising to about 6,714 meters. Unlike Everest or other Himalayan peaks, Kailash is not climbed. Religious leaders have strictly prohibited summiting it, preserving its status as a sacred, untouchable axis between the human and the divine. For Tibetans, Hindus, Jains, and followers of Bon, this mountain is not just a peak. It is a cosmic center, a spiritual engine around which entire belief systems revolve. Every year, more than 10,000 pilgrims undertake the Korai, a 51-kilometer circumambulation around the base of Mount Kailash. The path reaches an average altitude of about 4,570 meters, turning each step into a test of lungs, legs, and faith. Some devotees walk. Others prostrate themselves fully, rising and bowing again and again around the entire circuit. According to local legend, completing one kora cleanses the sins of a lifetime. 108 koras can cleanse the karma of many lifetimes, offering spiritual rebirth. Sky burial sites also exist around Kailash, further connecting the mountain with the idea of transition between life and death, earth and sky. Here, the mountain is not a conquest. It is a mirror. Standing beneath it, the usual travel questions, what can I do here? What can I post? Are replaced by a quieter one. Who am I actually when everything else is stripped away? From Kailash, the trail leads to haunted waters of a different kind, Lake Rakshastal, sometimes referenced in the video as Rakshastal Lanagto. This high-altitude saltwater lake sits at around 4,500 meters, and its salinity is so intense that almost no living organisms can survive in it. While Manasarovar, the neighboring lake, is associated with purity and holiness in many traditions, Rakshastal carries a more mysterious, sometimes darker reputation. Locals see it as the realm of a guardian deity, and stories of spirits and omens are tied to its strangely lifeless shores. Covering roughly 21,000 acres, nearly a third of the area of San Francisco, the lake is vast and stark, an expanse of water that reflects the Himalayas like a silent, glassy eye. Rituals and funeral customs still unfold along its edges, binding the community to the belief that even inhospitable landscapes are sacred, alive with stories and meaning. Here, the boundary between beautiful and hostile blurs completely. Back near Mount Kailash, Durapuk Monastery clings to the landscape like a stone guardian, one of the oldest monasteries in the Nari region. Pilgrims often stop here along the Kora route, pausing their physical struggle to absorb the spiritual weight of the place. Nearby, Darchen Monastery, rendered in the transcript as Darak, shelters a remarkable mural depicting the process of rebirth, a visual guide to life, death, and what might lie beyond. Ngari Prefecture as a whole feels like a vast open-air sanctuary, jagged mountains, bare plains, and remote settlements that seem to exist outside of time. For travelers chasing pristine nature, this region delivers that and more. It demands reflection, not just photographs. It is the kind of place where silence doesn't feel empty. It feels full. The journey then bends toward Chimpuk Hermitage, near the famed Sami Monastery, one of the cradle sites of Tibetan Buddhism. Chimpuk, founded in the 8th century, is known both as a place of spiritual retreat and as another site of sky burial. At roughly 3,658 meters, the hermitage commands sweeping views over the Shannon region, valleys, ridges, and distant snowy peaks unfolding in every direction. Chimpuk is where the idea of harmony between humanity and environment stops being a slogan and becomes a visible reality. From this spiritual stronghold, the path leads to Tibet's oldest palace, Yumbulagang, dating back to the 7th century. Perched at about 3,900 meters on a hill overlooking a broad valley, it doesn't tower like European castles. Instead, it stretches gracefully along the ridge, slim and vertical, almost like an extension of the rock itself. Sunlight wraps around its white walls, and from the roof, the view pours open. Fields, riverbeds, and distant mountain ranges painting a panoramic story of the Yarlung Valley. Covering around 1,115 square meters, Yumbulagang contains multiple rooms and stone stairways that showcase classic Tibetan architectural skill. Thick stone walls, narrow windows, wooden beams blackened by time and incense. Once the seat of Yarlung kings and a place of devotion to Tibetan deities, it now stands as both a historic relic and a living shrine, where visitors light butter lamps and locals still come to pray. Encircled by rugged hills, the palace feels like a lighthouse of memory, signaling across centuries. The landscape shifts again as the route swings into Nyingchi Prefecture toward Ligu Glacier, called Liu or Ligu in the transcript. This glacier stretches about 14 kilometers and is one of the region's largest feeding rivers that sustain life far downstream. In summer, temperatures hover around 10 degrees Celsius. In winter, they can plunge below -10, making survival a challenge for both people and wildlife. Despite the harsh climate, the area near Ranwu town supports a rich cultural life. Festivals, daily rituals, and seasonal practices are woven into the glacial calendar. When snow melts, when rivers swell, when the first frost returns. Travelers here don't just come for ice and rock. They encounter a culture honed by cold and altitude, one that knows how to turn scarcity into resilience. Following the meltwater further, the journey reaches Ranwu Lake, one of Tibet's most striking highland lakes. Stretching about 9 kilometers, the lake sits at roughly 3,500 meters above sea level, its surface mirroring surrounding snow peaks and forests. Scientists are increasingly drawn here, studying how the melting glaciers feed the lake and what that reveals about climate change on the plateau. Covering around 3.2 hectares, Ranwu may not be huge by global standards, but in the Nyingchi area it ranks among the largest natural lakes, supporting a surprisingly rich ecosystem. Villages around Ranwu reflect the diversity of Tibetan ethnic groups. Architecture, clothing, songs, and food vary from valley to valley, offering visitors an intimate look at how culture adapts to specific landscapes. Here, every shoreline feels like a meeting point between science, spirituality, and survival. From lakes and glaciers, the focus turns to words, to one of Tibet's great houses of memory, Durj Parkhang, Durj or Dura Parkhang in the transcript. Founded in the 18th century, this printing house has produced millions of classical texts, helping to safeguard Tibetan literature, philosophy, medicine, and history. Unlike modern printing presses, Durj Parkhang still relies on traditional hand-carved wood blocks, each page painstakingly engraved and inked by artisans. Inside, the building, roughly 92 square meters in area, is dense with shelves and stacks of wooden blocks, each representing generations of knowledge. Tens of thousands of prints are stored here, detailing everything from meditation manuals to epic poetry and medical treatises. Located at nearly 3,600 meters above sea level, the printing house looks out over mountains, a reminder that in Tibet, knowledge is quite literally preserved at altitude. The sound of workers operating the presses, the smell of ink and old paper, and the sight of streaming prayer flags outside create a fusion of the intellectual and the sacred. Locals call this region the Kingdom of Clouds, because on certain days, low clouds roll across the grassland like a white ocean, swallowing hills and tents in their path. Festivals blaze to life here as well. Music, dance, horse racing, and shared meals turn the highland plain into a vast outdoor celebration of identity and continuity. For a traveler, Ganja grassland is a final reminder that in Tibet, the most sacred rituals happen not inside four walls, but under an open sky. So, if you had to pick just one place to start, the ruins of a forgotten kingdom, a monastery of sky burials, a color-changing lake, a mountain no one may climb, or a printing house that holds the memory of a civilization, where would you go first? Tibet doesn't offer easy journeys. The air is thin, the distances are long, and the stories are heavy. But for those who go, it offers something modern life rarely does: the feeling that every step, every breath, every view is part of a much older conversation between humans, Earth, and whatever might lie beyond. If this journey through Tibet's concealed monasteries and ancient earth forests stirred your curiosity, stay with this channel. There are more remote kingdoms, sacred peaks, and hidden cultures waiting just off the edge of the usual map, and you don't have to leave your screen to start exploring them. Subscribe, share this documentary with someone who loves travel with a deeper meaning, and let us know in the comments, when you close your eyes, which Tibetan landscape do you see first?